Well, we're going to make bread again today, and this time I'll have my clothes on. And I don't think I'll have any problem with monetization, but it's about 2 months ago I uploaded a bread video, and it was in 3 sections, and I thought today, since I kind of know how to edit now, I might put together one complete bread making that even the kids could watch and enjoy. So I have all my, and my bread is really great. It's like an Italian loaf. It rises high. It's got great air pockets. I'm going to be away for the afternoon, so it'll be a great chance to let it rise and get some flavor. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get some yeast working in a bowl, and this is called proofing the yeast, and this is a very important part of the process. And I'm not too careful about measuring out ingredients and all that. I do like to use quite a bit of yeast for it gives a good flavor and it gives a good rise. And I will go ahead and stir that in, and over the next 5 or 10 minutes it'll proof and it'll get bubbly and it'll start to rise. And it's important to proof your yeast because proofing actually means proving that the yeast is still good. And if you were to just mix your yeast with dry ingredients, you would never have the rise or anything that you require for a really good bread. So you need to proof the yeast, get it wet with some warm water, lukewarm water, as I've done in a bowl here. And then I take and add about a tablespoon or so of sugar to it. The sugar is going to help to really activate the yeast and give it a good starter food. My bread's really easy because it doesn't have to be kneaded or anything, because Rosie's kind of a lazy gal in the kitchen, and being as I still have a lot of mail in me, I'm not much around kitchen equipment and all that stuff, but I do enjoy a good loaf of bread. And you're all gonna make this at home, and you're gonna say, Rosie, that's like some of the best bread I ever had. And we'll discuss it as I go along. So for the first little part, I just wanted to just show you I have about a cup of water in the bottom. I have about 2 tablespoons of yeast in there, and I have about a tablespoon of sugar. So in about 10 minutes, I'll kick that back on again. We'll take a look at her. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and open up my flour. You can see I don't muck around. I get the 25-pound bag. And I got this in my restaurant supply stores, Pendleton Flour Mills. And the thing is, this flour was made specifically to make bread. So it's higher in gluten, which means it has the ability to be a little more elastic and rise a little more powerfully. You want a high protein wheat flour, which this is, and I use the unbleached sort of natural. Not that I'm a big health aficionado, but if you don't have to have bleached flour to make bread, then why use it, right? So we'll catch up with you in about 10 minutes, and we'll check out the yeast. Okay, it's about 10 minutes later. We're making bread today, and let's get a view of the yeast in the bowl, because it has had a chance to proof, and you can see it's bubbly. It's happier in there than if it was at a fiesta. Okay, you can see all those great bubbles, and that just tells you you have a very active and happy yeast. So the next step, we have our other ingredients all set to go. I have 4 cups of flour that I've put aside here in a bowl, and you don't have to measure perfectly. I just put the scoop in. If it's a little higher or it's a little lower, it's fine. I have a little extra flour to make an adjustment once I add the water. I have my H2O here, and I have some salt. So the next thing I'm going to do, now that my yeast is all proofed, I'm going to go ahead and shake in my flour here. And it doesn't matter, you can add about half of it, add about 2 cups at a time, and you can stir that using a spatula on the outside, and you want to start to incorporate that flour into the water. And if you're going to make great bread, you have to get used to working with a wet dough. And when I add about half, after I've added about half of the flour in, I'll go ahead and take my salt here, and I'll add about a tablespoon of salt, because you can't have good bread if you don't have salt. Okay, it's just a basic fact of making bread that you may not believe it, but salt actually adds structure to bread. So you can see I'm pretty dry in the bowl here now, so I'll go ahead and I'll take my H2O, my water here, and I'll add some more water to it, maybe about a half a cup or so, and that will allow the dough to wet up again. And I will incorporate more of the flour in the bowl in it, and I'll take the balance of my 4 cups of flour and add it in now. And I've incorporated at this point, I've added to the bowl all of the basic flour that I want to add to the mix. And you can see that it's actually very dry and difficult to work with. So I'll take my H2O again, and you don't have to be real precise with adding your water to the mix, because I have my backup extra flour here to get the consistency that I want. So I will sit this down for a minute, and as I talk to you, I will go ahead and, using my spatula on the outside of the bowl, I will go ahead and incorporate all of my flour and water together, and I will have what almost looks like a goo in there. And you're thinking to yourself, you sure can't make good bread putting goo like that in a baking dish. Well, actually you can, and I'm going to prove that to you today. So I've gone around, and it's already, don't know if you can tell, but it's already reached a certain stretchiness here, the dough. And wet dough is a happy dough, and that's one of the keys to bread baking. And it's one of the things that I think we fall down on when we make bread. A lot of us these days, we're used to making these tight balls that you have to knead and work and stretch and all that. I let the water activate the proteins in the flour. So what it actually does is allow it to build stretchiness by just being exposed to moisture. And you can see now, I will show you the consistency, and it really is more like a batter than a dough. I could almost pour that if I had to. That's how wet and incorporated. And if step 1 of your bread baking, that's really the extent of all your mixing, and there's no kneading. So what I'm going to do now, since I'm going to be away for 4 hours or so today, I'm going to go ahead and cover this with foil, and then when I get back in 4 hours, that should really have risen well, and it'll be up to the top of the bowl. I will cover it with foil to keep it drying out. Spray the bottom of your foil with vegetable spray, something like Pam, a non-stick spray. Otherwise, the dough will stick to that foil, and you'll be pulling up a gooey mess. So we'll check back later this afternoon when I get back from the day trip. We're going to add the balance of our flour in to get a workable dough, and we're going to let that sit for about another hour or so, then shape her up, put her in the oven. Okay? Stick with me. We're going to have fun making some really great bread today. Well, it's been 3 hours since we put our bread dough in and mixed up our initial batter. So let's pull the top off now and take a look and see what we got. And you can see it's a good thing that I did spray the top, because although a little bit of dough is sticking to the top, basically it's only a very little bit. Most is in the bowl. And you can see amazingly how much this bread has risen. And if I drop the bowl, you can watch it deflate right down in the middle. So what I want to do now is I want to start adding flour to build the consistency of the dough, such that I can shape it into a ball to get it on, stretch it out and make a loaf out of it. Because I still wanted to have one more rise before we put it on the pan for cooking. So what I'll do now is I'll sprinkle a little bit of remember I set aside a cup of flour earlier, reserved a cup, and I'll sprinkle that around the edge of the dough. And what that'll actually allow me to do is to take my spatula and push the dough in from the edges and work it into a ball in the center. And that helps deflate the bread because you need 2 rises. And of course, I don't need bread. But now that that's deflated a little bit, I'll actually go in, add some more dough, some more flour around the edge. And I add about a half a cup. And now what I'm doing, I'll sit the cam down and I'll tilt the bowl forward to show you how I take my hand and I flour the fingertips slightly, and I go in here and I work the dough into a ball, the flour into the dough, and I actually swirl it around a little bit, incorporating all that new flour into it. And I'm not kneading now. I'm just working it around in a bowl here, and I'll add the balance of my flour. And believe me, as wet as the dough is, when that flour is added, that water in the dough will absorb that flour, and we'll be able to cover that and let her rise again for about an hour, and then she'll be ready to go on the pan and get one more small rise, and then we'll pop her in the oven. So you can see the consistency I have now has changed quite a bit. It's more like a ball, has more firmness to it. I'll now take a little bit of the balance of the flour that I have. I'll sprinkle it on, and I will add that in. And again, I will just swirl it around the bowl. I'm not kneading. I haven't removed it from the bowl. But you can see little by little as I turn it in itself here that I'm actually incorporating all of that extra cup of flour into the dough. And what's more, my hands stay relatively dough-free. I'll get a little bit on there. But it makes it easy to work around. And you can see I'll just work that a little bit more. And you can see now, if you do consistency check, I have something that would be a little more easy for that to maintain its shape if I was to put it on a baking pan. So we'll go ahead now, and I'll let this rise in the bowl for about an hour, and then we'll come back, add our last little bit of flour, get her shaped into a loaf, get her on the pan and into the oven. Okay, so thanks for watching, and make sure you stick with it, okay? It's a lot of fun to make your own bread. Well, it's later in the afternoon now. It's getting on about 5:15, and I've been out road tripping and out doing some other errands this afternoon. So the dough had a second chance to rise, and if you look in the bowl, you will see that it came up quite a bit. Not quite to the top as much as the first one, but as I push down, it deflates nicely there. It's now time to add flour once more, and for the last time, because we need to now. This has tremendous flavor incorporated in it right now because of the water and because of the flour that's already in there. So what we want to do now is take 1 cup of flour, and I've once again topped it up, and you just want to shake a little bit once again around the edges of the bowl on the inside. And what this allows you to do is to work the spatula down, and I put about a half a cup in there, and I'm sort of in the late afternoon sunshine right now. I put about a half a cup in right now, and I can now work that down from the edges again and get that basically knocked down into the bottom of the ball of dough. Now what I'm doing is incorporating that fresh flour into the mix and allowing the nice expanded and highly elastic dough to absorb that flour that I'm now putting in. Now what I'm actually doing is stirring it around in the bowl. Once again, I'm not kneading it. I haven't really put my hands on it at all to work with it, but I can guarantee you this is really going to make some tremendous bread. But the trick is now we have to get this to a consistency that it will hold its shape on the baking pan, because we'd like to have a loaf as opposed to a ciabatta or something shaped like a slipper, what they call the Italian wet dough that makes the ciabatta bread. So I'll continue to add some more flour, and I've probably added 3/4 of the cup of the flour that was here. Now we're at a point where I can take my hands, I can push my sleeves up. Now I've washed my hands very thoroughly. I don't have any jewelry on. I don't have any rings on, so it's very important to have to be sanitary when you're doing this. But what I'm going to do now is sprinkle some more flour around the outside of the bowl, and you can see now I have basically a ball in the bottom. And I'm going to lift this up and turn it a couple times to actually incorporate that last bit of flour in here. And I know I'm pushing the air bubbles out, and that's fine. But you can see this is really starting to be something that's going to hold its shape now. And it looks more like the traditional dough ball that you're used to seeing in making bread. I'm going to sprinkle a little more flour on, because I want my hands, I want the dough to not stick to my hands here. And I can turn it upside down and punch it down and pull it in from the edges to the center. And all that bread is plenty moist to keep absorbing that flour. So you can see now I really have something that is going to be able to hold its shape on the pan. Right? And that's exactly what you want. You don't want it to just lazily spread out all over, so you have a loaf of bread that's 1 inch thick. And this is the point also where you want to stop and you want to turn on your oven. Preheat your oven, make sure it's empty, and take out everything in that oven. Make sure you don't leave anything in there when there's no pans, no nothing. And you want to turn that heat on as high as it can go. And my oven can go to about 600 degrees. And you really need that high heat, that really high initial blast of heat when you put that dough in to the oven. Now this is basically absorbed almost all the flour that it's going to absorb. It's still very pliable, the dough, and I'm still basically, I'm not kneading, but I am working the dough in, the flour in the dough. And some of you say, well, Rosie, you know, it looks like you're kneading. Actually, I'm not. I'm just drying out the dough ball a little bit by making sure I can incorporate enough flour so that it'll hold its shape. So as we look down now, you will be able to see that it really has a nice shape. I'm now going to take my pan that I've prepared here, and I put some cooking spray on it. And I'm going to take the pan here, and I'm going to lift my dough up. I'm not going to worry about rolling it and all that, because I've sort of rolled it in the pan. As you can see, I'm rolling it forward on itself until it sort of makes a tight sort of feeling roll here. And I'm going to add a little more flour, because this dough is really good at absorbing this moisture in the dough is really good at absorbing flour. I'm sorry about the light it's getting on the afternoon. I'm just going to turn that in the bowl until it makes a nice shape and lift it out like that. And I'm going to now stretch it a little bit, and I'm going to place it on the pan, as you can see there. Okay? Now you can see that's really got a nice loaf shape to it. It's not watery, it didn't spread out all gooey and everything. So what I'm going to do now, while the oven is preheating, I'm going to spray that with some cooking spray, put some foil on top of that, and let that sit there and rest for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll be ready to pop her in the oven. Okay? So catch up with you guys. It'll be the next to last step here, getting her in the oven. Okay? Well, it's nice and sunny in the kitchen this afternoon, so I have to sort of change my seating to accommodate that. But I did want to show you our dough has been on the baking sheet for about 25 minutes, and it's held its shape well. And if you like a loaf that goes a little taller in the oven, you can always push it in on the sides, on the bottom, flour your fingers a little bit and scooch it in on the sides. You know, as you do left and right side at the same time, you can get it to rise up a little bit here on the baking sheet. But I like the way it is myself. The next thing to do is prep to get it in the oven. It's good to go, but I do like to spray the top of it with, I have a spray bottle with water, and I do like to spray the top of it just before I put it in the oven. But let's take a minute to just review about heat. Heat is very important for that initial blast when you stick it in the oven. That heat is what causes those yeast to go crazy and go into one last hyperactive movement to raise that dough up and expand with a lot of carbon dioxide being produced, okay? That's what gives the rise, that's what gives the big holes and the nice pockets in the bread. So you want to make sure that you preheat your oven for about a half hour, as high as it'll go, and then when it's time to put the bread in, listen carefully. You open the oven up, you give your bread the last spray of water on top, you put it in the oven, you close the door, and you set your timer for 7 minutes, okay? You keep that heat on high for 7 minutes. After 7 minutes, and only 7 minutes, not 8, not 10, you back that heat off to 375 to 400 degrees and let that bake off for another half hour, okay? I guarantee you, you're going to have some good eating. I'm going to prep this now, get it sprayed up, get it ready to put in the oven. The next time I see you, we'll be taking a little peek inside and seeing how she looks. Once we turn the heat down and let it go a while. Don't open and close the oven door while your loaf is in there, okay? At the 7 minute mark, when you turn your heat down to about 375, 400, you can take a little gentle peek in there and take a look at it, okay? Make sure it's in the middle rack of your oven. Close it gently. If you close the door too fast, the air will deflate your loaf, okay? You don't want that. You'll be mad at me, okay? 7 minutes, back the heat down to 375. I think 400 is just great, okay? I'll catch up with you when we take a peek, okay? We still got about 10 minutes left in the oven. We already backed the heat down about 20 minutes ago, but let's take a peek and see how she looks with a few minutes left to go. Here, we'll open up the oven. You can see how nice and brown that's getting and how high that's risen. That's lovely. So we'll let that finish baking. I like to run her about 400 degrees or so to finish that last half hour. But remember, working with a wet dough is not difficult at all. I didn't sit there and knead for 20 minutes and all that. We'll take it out of the oven, and when I get it out, I'll sit it down and let it cool a while. It should cool about a half hour before you slice it. And we'll take a slice of her and maybe have it with dinner. We'll see how she looks, okay? There's the loaf. I took it out of the oven, and you can see just by looking at it how much the bread rose there. And you know, it's at least 4 or 5 inches high. I don't have a stick to measure my ruler, but you can see how nice and gloriously high it turned out. And it has great color too. Okay, so I'm going to let it cool a while, you know, because it's never good to slice bread when it's hot because it's very soft inside. It's actually still baking. So you never really want to do that. You want to give it a half hour to an hour to really cool down, and then when you slice it, it won't compress on you. You'll be able to see all those nice taste pockets and air pockets inside. Okay, so I hope you like the look of that, and in the last section we'll open her up and take a look. Okay, thanks guys. Well, the bread's been out of the oven for about a half hour, and it's really easy for me to handle now. And you can see how big, 5 cups of flour can just make a wonderful loaf of bread. Flour, water, salt, that's about all you need, and some yeast, and you've got a great loaf of bread. It's time now. It's cooled enough. You don't want to slice hot bread, or else it's still moist. It's still baking inside, and you'll compress it and ruin it. So you can see the nice uniform color it has. The size is pretty uniform. So we'll go ahead now and just take a slice off the end here. And I always suggest that you have a bread knife as opposed to a regular kitchen knife. And take your time when you're slicing. It's not a race, okay? Take your time when you're going through. All right? And I went through that crust real nice. And you can see it's still nice and moist. It's still very moist inside. It's actually probably still cooking. But it is just a tremendous Italian bread. And you can see all the little air pockets and everything. All those little air pockets are what I call flavor pockets. They just give all the great taste to bread. Well, I'm happy you were along today to make this bread, because if you go to the store, as I do once a week, and now you see some specialty breads, if you see my uploads from my trips to Oliver's supermarket, you'll see that some of the breads are $5 and $6 for a loaf of bread. This bread is comparable in taste to what I saw at Oliver's, I'm sure. And what's more, this probably cost about 25 cents to make. It's healthier too. There's only 4 ingredients in here. Okay, so I want you to enjoy making this bread. You're not used to working with high heat, get used to it. High heat is your friend when it comes to making bread. You want the heat as high as possible for those 7 minutes and then back it down. Don't forget to spray the top. You make the top of that a little wet before it goes in, and that helps it, prevents it from forming a crust as long as possible, allowing for maximum rise. Then the crust sets. Okay, nice comments are appreciated. So is the occasional thumbs up. So thanks for being with me as I revisit bread baking, and I hope you go ahead and do this this loaf of quick bread. Okay, no knead quick bread. Thanks.